So I'm going to move on to introduce our next speaker, Clare Hatton, who is the Head of Skills Delivery at the West Midlands Combined Authority. And a reminder for those of you sort of watching along, please do put your Q&A for Clare into the chat box on the app, and we'll try and put as many of those to Clare as we can before we finish the session. So Clare, thank you for joining us, and we're interested to hear what you're doing in the West Midlands to try and increase that participation in basic skills learning. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, and gosh, what a hard act to follow. I don't think I've got anything anywhere near as inspirational as Kirsty and Razia had to say for us, but I'm going to try and give you a little bit of a flavour about what we're doing in the West Midlands, the challenges we face, how we're tackling it. The first question I was asked to reflect on was basically why is basic skills important? What part does it play in our skills agenda? Well, I think you've heard it, haven't you, already? And I think the evidence that Stephen presented, what you've heard from Razia and Kirsty, the evidence is really compelling of why work, life, community, family, everything, and surely we talk about levelling up, don't we? And surely absolutely basic skills has got to be at the heart of it and at the heart of the very definition of levelling up. So I think the argument is there, isn't it? So I'm not going to dwell on that, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the challenges for us in the West Midlands in meeting the basic skills needs of our residents, and what we've been doing to tackle that. So in terms of challenges, I think 4 things spring to mind for me: scale, funding, and we will have to touch on that, I'm afraid, delivery, and engagement. So in terms of scale, heard the statistics earlier, but to put it into context for us, 1 in 10 people in the West Midlands have no qualifications. 1 in 8 have poor literacy skills, and 1 in 4 have poor numeracy skills. With a population of around about 5 million. So that means this will test my numeracy skills, won't it? That around 750,000 of our residents have poor literacy skills, and around 1.5 million of our residents have poor numeracy skills. And just hold those figures, because I'm going to come back to them in a minute. And that pool isn't static either. Migration flows, but also unfortunately the pipeline from schools as well adds to that. So it isn't like if we fix this in our resident population, it goes away, because there's also a prevention issue that nobody should really be leaving, our schools education system without good literacy and numeracy as well. And I don't think when we talk about adults, because we don't talk about that enough as well, that is part of this. So scale for us is absolutely huge in the Midlands, and funding. Which is never enough, and it's never enough whatever part of the skill system we talk about. But Stephen showed a slide earlier where he said the AEB budget had halved between 2011 and 2019. That's the point at which we got the devolved funds, the point at which it had been halved in 2019. So it's not enough, and we have around 130 million total for the adult education budget, and for that we need to support basic skills, community learning, levels 1, levels 2, level 3, entitlement for 19 to 23-year-olds, etc. We have 130 million to do that, and we through that managed to support around about, depending on mix and balance, somewhere between around about 65,000 learners. And just hold that there, 65,000 learners for the entirety of our adult education budget, from community learning to level 3. 750,000 people with poor literacy skills, 1.5 million people with poor numeracy skills in the West Midlands. So when I say it's never enough, it really isn't enough. So there needs to be something done to be able to give a real injection to that, because even if we spent the whole of our adult education budget on literacy and numeracy and nothing else at all, it would be 20 years before we even got to that figure. And that is the scale of the challenge and the funding challenge for us. It is really significant. Delivery, I think that the delivery of English and maths is still a bit of a challenge for us. I was interested in Shazia's reflections about online learning. we saw during the pandemic, obviously participation fall in adult learning overall, but we saw it fall most dramatically in English, Maths and ESOL. And that's quite interesting, and where a lot of learning adapted and moved online. And that's not saying none of that did, but the falls were greater. And we heard a lot from our providers that learners with poor literacy, numeracy and ESOL can't learn online as well as those who are doing higher level skills. I'm not totally sure that that's true. I think we have to challenge ourselves to do better. We heard from Shazia about working full time, being a single parent, juggling lots of things, and actually online learning being a real solution, and not for everybody, but we have to find a way of being able to deliver English, Maths and ESOL, I think, in a blended way online far better than we do now. I think there's something about a lot of the pedagogical development in teaching and learning online hasn't really touched yet English, Maths and ESOL in the way it needs to. So I think that's a real challenge for us as well, getting people who can deliver in different ways so that people can access as and when they want, local to them as well. Engagement. I think not only the people not being aware that courses are not free, but lots of people who may require support with basic skills are time poor in terms of juggling jobs, family commitments, lots of other things in their lives. There's also something about, I think, about settling. Lots of people in work doing okay-ish, just think, oh, I can't go any further because I'm not very good at maths, but settle for that and never think about addressing it. Because I'm concerned one of the challenges for us, I think, is sometimes the narrative and the argument is always put in a deficit model about poor skills, about lack of, etc. And I think sometimes we might just need to think about how we change that narrative, how we talk differently about opportunity rather than about fixing poor skills. So I think there's a real challenge for us in that. But enough of the problems. So what are the sort of things we're doing? And we certainly haven't got all the answers at all, but this is something that's really critical to us in terms of extending opportunities to high quality provision for our residents to be able to engage and progress in work, in life, in their communities, with their families. So the sorts of things we've done is with ESOL, we did do a formal review of ESOL led by the sector, actually, led by practitioners, chaired by one of our college principals, and we looked at ESOL across the region and what we could do better together and more. And that has helped us thinking about different delivery. It's helped us introduce more vocational ESOL, so ESOL for care, ESOL for construction, rather than just standalone ESOL courses for people who want to do that. We've looked at accelerated delivery models with our providers. Lots of feedback from Job Centre Plus was that they didn't want people on a course forever. They wanted things more condensed. So we've looked at trying to flex the delivery, but we've tried to do that in a practitioner-led way with the sector. So it's not just, oh, we've decided this would be better, so therefore you must do it. And I think it's always wrong to do that as a funder. I think there needs to be some element of discussion, of co-creation, and we've tried to do that. We've tried to look at more of a coherence of offer. When we looked at English and Maths and the data we had historically, what we couldn't see a lot of was very much onward progression. I'm really pleased to hear both Kirsty and Razia's stories about going on to do other qualifications afterwards, and recognise that's not for everybody, but we were not seeing enough of that in the data. So we've tried to make sure that our providers work collaboratively locally, including our community learning providers, the local college and the ITP, so that they can progress learners between them if that's the right offer for them, rather than just having a provider-centric view. And I think that's really important from English and Maths, that once somebody's got that learning bug, that there's something else for people to go on to and explore further learning as well. So trying to bring more progression to the English and Maths space has been something that we've been working on doing, and more delivery of English and Maths for those people who are in work. We felt that there was a huge gap for people in work accessing training, English, Maths and some of the higher level skills as well. So we we commissioned specifically provision for people in work as well, that would be flexible, that would be tailored around their working hours as well, to be able to drive that up. And really sort of pleased to see in the recent budget recognition of those in work on universal credit and needing to step up the support there through additional work coaches. And I think English and Maths will be one of the solutions to be able to help support people progress in that as well. And then the other thing we've tried to do is we have tried to buy differently. We had something that technically we called Lot 3, which was our innovation lot under our adult education budget, where we buying outcomes for groups or for communities, and often that included the delivery of basic skills, but that's not how we bought the service. We bought outcomes for, as I say, for particular groups. We work with some amazing community providers in the West Midlands who work in different ways. So instead of just funding qualifications, we pay a price per outcome. And they will deliver basic skills as part of that. And we're certainly starting to see some real success from that. And we're looking to do more of that as we move forward as well. So that's a little bit of a flavour of.
Oh, Claire, sorry, we've lost you onto mute there just at the last.
Oh, I'm sorry. But that's a little bit of a flavour of some of the things we've been doing. And then just finally, for a minute, reflections on what we would like to see happen moving forward. Obviously more money, but I think the pot isn't endless, and we recognise that. But there's a real opportunity to join up UK shared prosperity funding when it comes out, so that makes the bigger pie for provision. I think more work with Job Centre Plus in terms of early identification and screening, so we can get more rapid intervention and more screening of those who are not just job seekers, but those who are in the economically inactive, the old ESA type groups as well, and where we can get to people more quickly to make them aware of that. And I think as well, more for teaching and teaching practice, teaching support. So a bit of a reflection on what I think we'd like to see as well moving forward. Thank you, Stephen.
Fabulous. Thanks, Claire, and lots of things covered there that we can sort of pick up on as well. Yeah, to agree with the point you were making, and that's come up in the chat as well about the language point. So I think sort of we sometimes talk about core skills or capabilities or skills for life. That's what we call the alliance we put together, rather than basic skills, and thinking more about how that creates new opportunities rather than being a problem to be fixed. I think we sort of agree with that, and lots of people saying so in the Q&A as well. And also the points about inspiring learners as well, and that kind of links, I think, to your point about the sort of ESOL for work points or contextualized provision as well. Something I did in London back when we were regenerating King's Cross back in I fear it was the mid 2000s now, but yeah, so kind of because it's linked to getting a job, that kind of inspired some people. Lots of other, confidence we heard from our learners earlier, lots of other things, but it's kind of getting at what people are interested in and hooking them in. If I can perhaps ask you just to bring through a couple of the points. If there's loads of chat going on, which is brilliant, but I'm also trying to navigate it in live time here. But there's a couple of points which I think are linked together. So there's somebody asking about family learning, for example, and how sort of learning for adults can also help learning for children and vice versa. And it links to other points people have put in, I think, about how one of the opportunities of local government is how you join up and integrate services. So I'd just be interested in your thoughts about what you're doing in the West Midlands to try and join up this English Maths ESOL provision with whether it's schools or other provision or job centres you mentioned, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, it's a real critical part. Family learning is absolutely key to our community learning strategy. Of our 130 million, with about 15 million of that is on community learning, and part of that is family learning. We've been working with our community learning providers around re-energising family learning, actually, because of the benefits to children, but actually taking a slightly different view on families as well, and looking at how we work with families who've got young unemployed children, so in the sort of 18 to 24 space as well, and about how we get families to learn together. So not just school children. I think it's been quite traditionally helping kids with their homework essentially, hasn't it? And I think that's great, but we've been trying to say, actually, how else can we use those opportunities? In terms of joining up, I think that's the one of the big benefits of devolution, in that each of our local authorities, when we look at what adult provision we're buying, we work very closely with them. We look at the mix and balance we need, sits alongside what they've already got through their other services. When we talk about place and making sure that we have things that are accessible and close to people's homes and in the communities, we work with the local authorities to identify which are the communities you want provision delivered in, where are the community centres, which premises can you give or lend, or very cheaply give to providers as well. So I think there's lots of little practical things like that about sewing things and knitting things together on the ground that we do. And then things like health and social care, local authorities' biggest commissioner of health and social care provision. When we get to people in the workforce, it's how we do it through the other people they're funding as well, the other services they're funding. So continually trying to look for those join-ups.
Great, thank you. I guess sort of flowing on from that, actually, because and something you talked about as well, and we heard from our learners earlier, is about the sort of inspirations for people to want to learn and the many benefits they get from learning. So somebody's asked, anonymous, which is why I'm saying somebody, has asked about, so for example, ESOL for work, which is the thing that you mentioned I picked up on, is fine as long as it doesn't leave people with just enough language for poorly paid work. And it kind of gets at that sort of, what's the purpose of education and what's the purpose of learning? And it's kind of, there's a lot, the government white paper is called Skills for Jobs, not Learning for Life. And there are some reflections on more broadly in there, but there's a kind of, I'm interested in your perspective, in the West Midlands perspective, about what our ambitions are here for people as in their lives, as well as for jobs as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're totally right. There is a huge difference about preparing people for crappy 0-hour contract jobs and good work and work with progression. And one of the things we've been working really closely with our providers on is we've started it with SWAP provision, sector work-based programme provision, and we've called it SWAP Plus, so that if somebody goes through a SWAP and then they move into employment, there's a guaranteed offer of a level 2 qualification part-time alongside work as well. And that's something we want to extend to things like English, maths and ESOL as well, so that when people move into work, we don't buy qualifications. We're trying not to buy qualifications with a funded list. We're trying to buy outcomes for people, which is personalised, which is about their journey. So it is very much about that onward support as well, and what more we can do to people to get them where they want to. And absolutely that is a work focus, but there is a huge recognition as well that of the outcomes, the wider outcomes of basic skills as well, of English, maths and language. And that's why for our community learning providers, we have an outcomes-based framework rather than a progression into employment. We try to look at it, by different areas. So some things are about moving people into work, SWAP provision being that. Basic skills is really about moving people on, and that might be on to further learning or on in their life and on with their confidence, as much as it is moving them into work. So it's trying to make those judgments as well in that kind of way, in terms of how we look at success.
Great, thank you. And I'm trying to put two sort of relatively specific questions to you as well. I'm trying to get through as many as I can. So Alex has asked about, so you talked about the ESOL review that you've done with providers. I don't know if that's kind of publicly available, if there's a link to that. And then Julie Gorman's asked about whether you're working with the trades unions and union learning reps for that kind of learning in the workplace as well.
Yeah, so on the ESOL review, yes, absolutely, I can get you a link. It is published, it's on our website. It's called Unlocking Our Potential, a review of ESOL in the West Midlands. It was chaired by Mel Lenahan, who is principal of Faircroft College, and did an amazing job of doing that. And we came up with a key set of recommendations, and Mel chairs now the group of practitioners working through and taking those forward. So that's been a really good piece of work, and I think we'll see more benefits from that as we move forward. In terms of trade unions, yes, we do work with the trade unions. we've continued our relationship with them. So we have an MOU. We work with them around, obviously that in-work learning, and we are hoping to do some more thinking and work with them around, you mentioned Multiply earlier, to make sure that Multiply can reach those people in work as well. We will be working with the trade unions to do that. So yeah, absolutely.
And last question, we could grill you for another couple of hours here with questions coming through, but you don't worry, I'm not going to. Last question. So this is about ambitions for the future, really, I guess. So I know you kind of, the adult education budget is like a fixed amount, and yes, you're right, it was handed over to you once it had been halved, which is always a sort of a nice thing. So I know there's a fixed pot there. You would like it to be bigger. You know, I know there's things like Shared Prosperity Fund, which you would hope, I'm sure, to sort of have a fair share of within the West Midlands. I guess sort of, you know, the figures over the last 10 years of adults taking part in AEB funded basic skills learning in the West Midlands, like everywhere else, have gone down sharply. And you've now got control of that halved budget, but you know, kind of got control of that, and you're doing all that other stuff you talked about. Would you be hoping in, you know, if we come back in 3 years' time, for example, would you be hoping there's more adults who are taking part in that essential literacy, numeracy, digital provision, or what's your kind of ambition for sort of scale? You mentioned scale earlier.
Yeah, I think, you know, God, we would hope that there was more adults doing all types of learning, actually. And I think one of the things that we'll have to do and need to do collectively is look at different delivery models, about where you do get some efficiencies about online, and that isn't about starting and going, oh, can we cut a rate, because that isn't the intention, but there obviously are some efficiencies we can get, not just from the delivery of basic skills, but of some of the higher level provision as well. And again, are there some efficiencies we can get there? We're already talking with our colleges about how some delivery can go across all of the colleges, you know, instead of everybody doing the same thing. If something's online, can you broadcast lectures? Can you do things? So I think there is a different way of looking at using horrible word efficiency that actually could help us drive that. I also think, though, there is some more to be done with the private sector. Now, I think this is something that we're starting to see quite a lot of with digital. We see most of the big tech companies are happy to offer free digital literacy workshops, you know, the Google pop-up garages, lots of those type of things. And we try to take as much advantage as we can of that in our region and get those plugged into the community areas we need. I think we need to try and make English and maths a little bit sexy in that kind of way, that we can get corporates to do the same kind of thing, so it doesn't cost any of us anything, but people still get the benefit. So I think there's more to be done on public-private partnerships as well, around the collective investment in our communities, in levelling up and our future prosperity as well.
Fabulous, yeah. Lots of, Claire, thank you for joining us this morning. Like you say, you had a tough act to follow after those learners. But we covered a lot of ground there, I think, and I got through as many of those questions as I could as well. And the number of questions coming through, I think, kind of shows people's interest in the topic in general and the work that you're doing in the West Midlands, and lots of interesting things going on that we'll want to keep in touch with and involved with. So Claire, thank you for joining us this morning. It's very much appreciated. Right, so we're now at the end of this part of the session, and we're going to be moving on to our breakout sessions. You should all have the links, hopefully, for those, but I think they will also be posted in the in the chat as well, in the Q&A. But we are going to pause between now and 11:05 because as most of you, I'm sure, will know, today is Remembrance Day, marking the armistice at the end of the First World War, and so we want to give those of you that would like to observe the 1 minute silence to remember all of those who gave their lives in wars over the years. a chance to do so at 11 a.m. with the rest of the country. So we're going to pause between now and 11:05 to give everyone a chance to do that if you wish to do so. And those breakout sessions, which hopefully you've all got the links for, they will start at 11:05. So thank you for joining us for the first part of this morning, and such a lively Q&A, which is fantastic. I'll try to get through as many of those questions as I could, and we'll try and do that through the rest of the day as well. So please stick with us and click on the links to go to your breakout sessions. They'll start at 11:05, but we'll pause now for the minute silence for Remembrance Day. So thank you, everyone.